Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
A former employee of a Tallahassee Whataburger files a lawsuit claiming the restaurant chain forced her to quit after she refused to only hire white people. According to the complaint, Vanessa Burrows worked at the restaurant location on Appalachie Parkway in Tallahassee. Burrows claims she was told by her superiors in 2015 to hire white applicants only. She refused to comply and hired 8 crew members, 7 of whom were black. Burrows says she was repeatedly reprimanded by upper management for her actions, which ultimately led to her involuntary resignation. The United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is requesting a jury trial. Now, the company issuing a statement saying, quote, based on our thorough internal investigation, we dispute the allegations. We value diversity in our teams and proudly employ family members of all races, end quote. Now, to view the full complaint, you can visit our website at WTXL.tv.
Black brother hell.
Promotions they believe they deserve. They are retired now. They say this lawsuit is about the African-American detectives who are still on the force.
Do I think that I'm extra smarter than the other detectives? No. I think I should have gotten promoted with the other detectives.
Retired Detective John McCullum, one of 3 NYPD veterans, filing a federal class action lawsuit today, alleging that black detectives in the department's elite intelligence division were systematically discriminated against, passed over for promotions in favor of white colleagues.
If you wanted a transfer, just like if you wanted a promotion, it was up to the high-ups. The high-ups, primarily white supervisors, who would promote and transfer those who were their friends.
The lawsuit also alleges, rather than focusing on the intelligence division's central role of tracking terrorists, African American detectives were often relegated to less desirable units inside the division, such as the so-called rap unit, charged with deterring the violence that surrounds some hip-hop artists.
I have no regrets taking the job and doing, the time that I did. It's just very saddening that you do your best and you're not acknowledged.
The detectives originally filed a federal complaint against the department back in 2011. After a 5-year investigation, the EEOC concluded that black detectives did not receive equal treatment in promotion.
We repeatedly told the city of New York about the rampant discrimination in the intelligence division. They have known about this for years. And they have done nothing.
But the NYPD tonight disputing that claim in a just-released statement saying a review of a recent 10-year period, which included the time frame of this litigation, shows that black third-grade detectives within the Intelligence Bureau were promoted at a faster pace than their colleagues. Now, tonight, the NYPD is also adding that right after that EEOC review, they, in fact, made a presentation to the DOJ where they talked about their promotions and also the diversity in the department. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, then declined to review the EEOC's case. Of course, now a federal judge will make that decision.
Black brother hell.
Co-working began with communities of entrepreneurs working alongside each other, sharing desks, coffee machines, and in many cases, ideas. Well, now, as NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports, co-working is an industry unto itself.
Michael Silvers has worked at home and in corporate offices, but prefers his small rented glass-walled co-working space in downtown Washington, D.C.
Every office that I've worked in, you're kind of down in your own little hole. You don't really interact as much with other types of businesses.
Co-working led to unexpected benefits for Silvers and his co-founder, who run Clear Codex, an app development firm. They recruited a business partner they met at WeWork and learned a far more efficient way to develop software from other startups there.
From concept design through to a working app in the App Store in 4 weeks. It was just amazing. I mean, we saw how fast you can do development because of what we caught up on here at WeWork and seeing other people doing it.
Co-working spaces are attracting a growing population of office workers who spend more time working from home, hotels, and cafes. Walk into one and you'll find desks, monitors, and meeting rooms along with the creature comforts of home. There are convivial open spaces and areas to allow silent retreat into more focused, productive work. Close quarters bring with it some privacy challenges. Tan Lee, who runs Visually Dynamic, says he's learned to cope.
You minimize the screen, or you kind of turn the monitor a little bit.
Part of the appeal is flexibility. Monthly membership means avoiding the commitment of a long-term lease and the hassle of stocking, say, printer ink. Travelers can use memberships at multiple locations, but the real value, co-working companies say, is a more innovative work culture. David Fano is Chief Growth Officer for WeWork, the largest player, which has expanded to more than 220 worldwide offices in less than a decade. He says the biggest demand comes from large corporations looking for ways to make their workers happy and productive.
How do companies engage in helping individuals be successful and fulfilled?
Customers want WeWork to provide the basics, as well as to plan happy hours, cooking classes, and to manage the online forums that keep workers engaged.
Programming around wellness. We're doing a lot of things with workplace mindfulness, thinking about the kinds of food and beverages that are in the work environment, and being just as thoughtful about that as we are with like ergonomics and furniture.
There are several factors driving growth. Telework keeps growing, and independent workers, contractors, freelancers, and the like make up a bigger part of the labor force. Plus, there are more tools that make it easier to collaborate online. Gretchen Spreitzer is a management professor at the University of Michigan and says there are psychic benefits.
Qualitative research does show that people feel like they're more productive in the company of others that they trust rather than just sitting in a coffee shop.
But Spreitzer says WeWork has plenty of competition, and it's under pressure to keep their members renewing month after month.
We're seeing today turnover of members in spaces as competitors come up with cooler spaces or other amenities.
Scott Galloway, a marketing professor at New York University, agrees. He says the big question is how big or valuable the co-working industry might be. Privately held WeWork is valued by some estimates at $20 billion, a sum Galloway doesn't believe is justified.
There are a lot of organizations that own real estate that could probably offer somewhat of a Me Too model.
WeWork may not be that valuable, he says, but the company and the co-working movement are here to stay. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News, Washington.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, September 28th, 2017. So I have been told record-setting heat here in the Seattle, Washington area today. It is 85 degrees. I cannot recall the last time that it has been 85 degrees this late in September, if ever, in Seattle. I'm going to have to double check to see if this is a all-time record, but if this is a farewell as we move into autumn. Wow. Summer has already ended, but I guess this is us getting a little bit extra vitamin D before everything gets really cold. For Stacy in the UK and other folks who are outside the United States, 29 degrees today in Seattle, Washington. That is absurd. 29 degrees Celsius here in Seattle, Washington today, which is just absurdly warm for this time of year here. Anyway, I'm sure that did not stop workplace racism from happening here in Seattle or any place else. If you have commentary that you would like to share, this is our weekly Workplace Racism Forum. Dial in. If you are a Black entrepreneur, certainly dial in. Let us know how being self-employed has changed your workplace landscape for the better, for the worse, or, just how things have changed being self-employed, as they say. If you have figured out, whether you're self-employed or not, if you have figured out some things so that you are not being mistreated, meaning you get to go to work, you're not being falsely accused, you're not getting any unwanted touching or lewd sexual comments, they pronounce your name correctly, you get your paycheck on time, it's accurate, you get all your promotions and what have you, totally unmolested workplace experience, you got a great office and think you're going to be able to chill out, do your job until you get ready to retire, whenever that is. You should be one of the first folks to dial in. The number 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. Number again, 641-715-3640. Code 564943#. And certainly, if you are having problems, any difficulties on the job, and you just want to get suggestions, different counter-racist perspective on your situation and possible ways that you can go about trying to solve problems without creating more problems on your job, certainly dial in. I'd be happy to share my views. I'm sure we have a lot of other listeners who'd be willing to offer their thoughts as well. Just suggestions, maybe help you deal with things. And again, if you've dialed in before to share a thought, experience with us, regardless of whether you use some of the suggestions that were given or not, dial back in and give us the update, because that is helpful. We are trying to learn. And if you figure out, hey, I did this and it worked, great. We definitely want to hear that, to know people have used this successfully, and this is how it worked. They were able to say this, and this is how whites responded on the job. If it didn't work, that's good to know as well. We know, hey, this is maybe not the best way to go about dealing with this problem, because it did not work out well for me. We are still learning, and I think it's very important that we talk about workplace racism on a regular basis, because so many of us, regardless of how bad your situation is, the amount of violence that you're being subjected to on the job, it's probably very similar to what's happening to a lot of other non-white people, because it seems that whites, they have a very specific workplace code about how they terrorize Black people, and it seems they do a lot of the same things worldwide. As always, you can drop an email if you're not able to dial in via phone, or if you're just concerned about your voice being recognized. You can drop us an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. Drop us if you have commentary on anything that has been shared, or if you have your own situation that you want to offer, drop us an email. We can read your commentary on the air. You don't have to. We can do it with anonymity. You don't have to worry about being identified. With those clips, the first one, the Whataburger, where the person said that they were instructed to only hire white people. They did not have a photo or image of the person who is making this accusation against this fast food chain, or this restaurant specifically. But I think we've heard quite a bit of those types of reports before. I think Reveal, they had a podcast from last year. It was, I think, a 2-part segment where it was the same thing. It was a temp agency, and they were giving the jobs to white people, or they would move a little bit down. What Dr. Wells used to say, Black get back, brown stick around. They would give it to, quote unquote, Latinos or Hispanic, whichever word they used, quote unquote. They would give it to them, but definitely excluding Black people from getting these jobs. We've heard that sort of thing before. That seems to be pretty standard practice that probably goes a long way to explaining the Black unemployment rate. And I might even submit, if it is a white person, which, the accusation might, they might, I suspect they would have said that, that, hey, how could the person who's making this accusation is a black person or whatever else. What are you talking about? But if this was a white person, I suspect that it could have been the white people on the job had some sort of dispute or disagreement. And this person is going to say, well, hey, I'm going to show them, I'll accuse them of being racist, because I know that they were only hiring other white people. This wasn't a problem until they had some other dispute. I've seen where whites, sometimes that can be an issue for them as well. With that, there was a person who wrote in. I wanted to read their commentary before I get to some of the folks who dialed in. This person wanted to share. See, this is black male. Commentary reads, I was recently proctoring an exam in a history class. The history teacher was supposed to be there, but he waited in the hallway the entire time. I was examining the classroom when I noticed a few poster boards put up by students that read, Abraham Lincoln was not a racist. He did not believe in slavery and wanted the Negroes to be free. He believed the Negroes had the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is why we are so confused about racism. It starts in the classroom. Absolutely. Even before the classroom, really, but it's total system, and they are going to make sure that you are getting constantly the messaging, the programming of racism, white supremacy. I don't know if the instructor for this class was a white person or a non-white person, but I know even if it was a non-white instructor, that person is a victim of racism, so they might not have accurate information, and or they might, feel, hey, I'm intimidated about saying something about this, addressing this problem. They might not have the language, because a lot of times we don't talk about workplace racism. They might not have the vocabulary. What would be the most effective way for me to go about addressing this if this is a problem? If it's even a non-white instructor. If it's a white instructor, then, you already know what the problem, or you already know what's happening there. Anyway, again, if you have commentary that you would like to share, write in, feel free. And the question I think that I asked last week, one that I do think is important. If you have developed, your counter-racist code, or let's say you've listened to Mr. Fuller or some of the other folks who talked about workplace racism, and you've adopted some of their suggestions, you apply them in the workplace. What are some of the things that keep you from consistently applying your counter-racist code on the job? I think that is important, something that we should think about, because I think most, if not all of us, have had times where these are things that we believe in terms of counter-racism. This is how we would like to handle a situation, but then we don't do it when we get in that situation, particularly on the job. And I think it's important to maybe explicitly point out some of those things that can be a problem, because then we can, try to work on ways to eliminate that problem, so that people can be a little bit more consistent in applying counter-racist code. It's all well and good to talk about in theory and abstract, but at the end of the day, counter-racism is about doing deeds, not words. I think they say well done better than well said. That for sure applies with counter-racism. Application is critical. That's how you know that you have learned. Number again, 641-715-3640, and the code 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Also thought from the second segment, where the black NYPD officers quickly, I also thought that was important, because we talked about that on the program as well. I think when you are confused about racism, white supremacy, and some of those black officers were saying, hey, we were doing our best and it didn't matter. It did not. We were not being promoted. We were not reaping the benefits from our hard work, dedication, and coming in. And we're public servants, no less. We're not working at Kinko's or something. We are officers, in the state of New York, and we're not getting promoted. Our hard work, nobody cares that we're doing a great job. And that's something that I think a lot of black people, you talk about black mental health, I think for a lot of black people that really erodes, destroys their motivation for wanting to work, wanting to do a good job at work. When you go in, you do all that, you're working hard, and you're not being compensated correctly, you're not being promoted, you're still being subjected to white supremacy and terrorized on the job. It confounds you, and then it just totally erodes any commitment to, I'm going to come in here and try and do a great job. Anywho, folks have commentary. Again, what stops you from practicing counter racism on the job? If you have thoughts, observations, if you have even comments on what the young person who proctored this exam, thoughts on what he had to say from folks who work in education, feel free. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, we'll be opening lines up immediately.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Hey, 2812. Good evening, guys. Good evening to all the callers. Workplace racism. I'll share two things. One is I'm on a board. I'm in the mortgage business, and I'm on a board of Chamber of Commerce in the local place where I live, and they assigned me to some committee. And maybe I'd probably say maybe 2 months ago, we had our first meeting about some sort of event that they're putting together, and there was a white female that said something in the during the comments when we were having dialogue, and she said, "Oh, we need to make sure that we have inclusion, and there's got to be a black person, and people of color is really, really important." And I just found it odd that she said that. And I was like, that's strange for a white person to just come out and say that. And just being more observant, just paying attention more to white people. And I think we can study them every day, as Mr. Fuller says. Typically, when somebody makes that comment, the agenda is not really supporting is not really supporting black people or any other non-white person. The reason why I'm mentioning that is I was in a shop this morning getting something to drink, and I saw this same woman. She didn't notice me initially. I was standing behind her. She glanced at me. I had sunglasses on. And then I walk up to the counter, order my beverage, and then when the person asked me my name, I say my name. She's like, "Oh, you're the same guy from the chamber thing." And I'm like, "Yes." And we get into a quick dialogue. And she mentioned that her child was getting married. And I said, just trying to study and listen. I said, "Who's the lucky girl?" And she said, "Oh, no, it's not a girl, it's a guy." And immediately my codified response was like, that's what it is. Never supporting non-white people, always about some other agenda. Always has to be about LGBT or something of that nature, but there's never, ever going to be a suspected racist that is actually really going to be genuinely looking to help a non-white person, period. I already know that, but it's always good to get evidence of that. And I continuously see that any suspected racist that I encounter that even looks like, even at my job or anything of that nature, if they even look like they're saying something that can sound suspicious, that's supporting a non-white person, it's either something that's going to be involved in anti-sex or they're having sex with a non-white person, period. The second thing is right now, I would call this in the area of labor. I'm continuously on hunts and tours and things of that nature with my oldest son in reference to colleges and things of that nature. And one thing that I am noticing and trying to do a better job of is particularly I run into this daily, is conversing with other non-white people and other victims are having conversations in the area of education. Literally, if a school or a place of education is considered black, it's a lot of anti-blackness around it. And it's been affecting me at the job a little bit. Anti-blackness has always affected me, but it's just because I'm a little bit less confused. You just have no idea how many times people at the job are saying other victims are saying other anti-black things and not realizing that even just stopping communicating in that way can be very, very effective. And just how we perceive things, adding value. And I'm just noticing that, particularly in the area of HBCUs and also local high schools, to where there are large populations of non-white people. Every time somebody talks about the school, it could be a good school, but the words I'm consistently hearing are ghetto and things of that nature. And I even had to point out to one parent, we were having a conversation that we worked together, and I said, the only reason why people say that is because it's black. There's no other evidence of it. And she came up to me maybe 2 or 3 days ago and said, you know what, I thought about what you said, and I'm going to change what I say. She said, it's difficult, but I see that would be constructive. And so I know I rambled a little bit, but I just wanted to share that. It's been a while since I called in, and thanks, Gus, for allowing me to speak.
Appreciate that. That is grand if you're able to get some other black people to reconsider the way that they use words. That is spectacular. I think over the years we have talked about anti-blackness on the job. I was even reflecting just this very week how that used to be the dominant focus, unfortunately, in my opinion, of workplace racism was anti-blackness with other coworkers. It was as if there were no white people in the universe anymore, at least on the job. But that certainly a lot of people, that is, that is a legitimate problem where, just dealing with other victims of racism who are not codified and are often, hostile. The name calling and joking, or like you said, just the comments that they use, the way that they'll talk about a school that has a lot of black people, that sort of thing. That is very, very common and a big part of what the system of white supremacy is designed to produce. In its victims, including Gus T Renegade. I know Dr. Welsing talked about that as well, that you can be effective making sure that you don't participate in those behaviors yourself, and just seeing that will stand out. Or consistently, the black people that you work with, they don't hear you participating in all that trash and talking down about black people, or even just the way that you talk about those black schools, as opposed to, you said, oh, that, such and such is ghetto, that high school is ghetto, or I don't know which HBCU they were, which school they were referencing, but having something constructive to say, like, oh man, such and such was happening at Morehouse and they were doing great, this, that, and the other, or, just having something constructive to say about black people, things that black people are doing, and making sure that you're not engaged in talking down about black people and or associating black people with anything that is adverse or vile or trashy. It can have a big impact in terms of just getting other people to see that and say, hey, I think that's constructive. I'm going to do the same thing. Great job, in my opinion, and also great observation about the, I guess they would call having ulterior motives for appearing to support a black person, whether it's LGBT issues or whatever it is not altruistic concern for black people. Great observation. Do we have other folks who had a hand up, either if you wanted to comment on what you've heard thus far, or if you had your own comments you wanted to share, feel free.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Red.
So thank you for taking my call. Hello, everyone. I just had a few comments, and it actually is just referring back to the question that Gus asked last week about what would keep you from practicing your code. And I feel like I'm kind of being tested because one of the non-white people that I associate with at the job, is a non-white female. She had I don't know why, but she seems to like to give me updates about the white woman who basically used to terrorize me, the one who would, she had like little nicknames for me, can I touch your hair? And also she was the one who was actually touching me. So she had recently told me about an update on her, like, oh, well, she basically replaced you and now she's hanging out with some other non-white people. Now, the first thing through my mind was that went through my mind was to say something negative, but then I did think about, just trying to really formulate my code and just to make sure that I'm not just learning, just not just trying to acquire all this like anti or counter racist logic, but to actually apply it. And so all I did was just kind of chuckle and didn't really respond to, being replaced. It's something that, okay, well, it's just a tacky, it's just falling in line of what this white woman was supposed to do, supposed to be tacky. It's just something that I really didn't care about. So that was the first thing. The second thing is me and my sister, because we both really don't like our jobs, just not just the racism, but just the job in and of itself. So we've been trying to just really brainstorm about being entrepreneurs. And she had told me about how these two black females, and I don't know if anyone else has heard about this, but there are these two black females. They are selling like these, she called it a safety pin box. And basically what it is that it's supposed to be anti-racist messages that they send out to white people, and it's like a subscription-based service. So they send out these little boxes with suggestions on how white people can practice anti-racism, and that's quote unquote. And they charge the white people $100 a month, and apparently they already have 1,000 white people. And I'm really, I just kind of think that that's funny, because it's like, it just really goes back to what has been said on this show plenty of times. Black people are the most confused about racism. So it's kind of like, I feel like it would just give white people an excuse. I think it is to, if they do feel like practicing racism one day, they can just go back and say, well, hey, I have been paying these black females to get these suggestions. So I don't know if my sister actually wanted to start something like that, but I'm really apprehensive about like taking that step. And the last thing about the last segment, I kind of find it odd about the whole workspaces with different businesses, because it would seem like security would be somewhat of a issue, at least with me, just the different jobs that I've had, like, dealing with finances or whatever. I know that if your client has, personal information, I would be kind of concerned of having other businesses, possibly being able to access that information, even if you're using your own computer, what have you. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
That's a good point about the information. If you're in there, presumably you would have to be on their network, right? If you're going to check your email and do all the other surfing, as they say. Do they have access? And then how would you know? I mean, the technology is advancing so rapidly. You probably have folks who are getting even better with their stealing information skills, hacking skills, as they say. Wow, with some of your, I guess, other personal workplace observations, what was the second incident? You said you and your sister, neither one of you like your jobs. Oh, it was the black people being confused. Yeah, the second incident again?
The second incident about my sister was that we're thinking about being entrepreneurs, but we don't really know what business to go through. And she saw some post or something where these black females, they're selling like this safety pin. So they call it safety pin boxes. And they're selling it's a subscription base, and they have like basically anti-racist messages for whites who want to so-called be anti-racist.
Okay, I think I saw the safety pin thing when Donald Trump first got elected, like right at the end of the year, I think 2016. But yeah, I could see the same thing. Anything connected to Donald Trump, I could totally see how whites are gonna use and manipulate that down the road. I bought some pins from them, so I'm not a racist, or they'll have that as their evidence. They can just sit the box out on their desk. Of course, I'm not racist and all the other, but yeah, certainly black people, as you stated, we're the ones that are most confused about racism. No contest. And I think there are other folks that are trying to do the entrepreneurial thing, so there might even be people to help with that. Might be able, willing to offer some suggestions, help in aiding other black people become self-employed. Other folks that are listening in, did you all have comments, suggestions? You have your own thoughts you want to share? Folks are spectating. We even have other folks who have hands up. So no spectating on workplace racism. We'll say again, I know this is not the most fun conversation that we could be having, but very important. And again, it should be impossible to have 3 black people, 4 black people get together and not have robust, lengthy conversation about workplace racism. If you are listening in and things are great for you on the job, outstanding. I'm happy for you. I hope it lasts for as long as you want to work. But I strongly suspect if you're listening to this here program, things are probably not hunky-dory on the job. And if you have a work history, you certainly can reflect on things that have happened throughout your work history. I think that's important too, because sometimes when we're more confused, things happen to us on the job, we don't recognize it as racism. Then as we have a better understanding, we think back, oh yeah, that was an incident of racism, white supremacy. You can even add to that, this is what I did then when I was more confused. This is what I would do now, having better information. I think we can learn a lot from that as well. Particularly, we do have younger listeners who don't have an extensive work history. So it's good for them to hear about some of the things that they might unfortunately have to look forward to in the system of white supremacy. Let's see. The person's 8043. 8043. Did you have commentary?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Gus. We're having a wonderful day. I was calling because yesterday I had a situation that happened to me at my job. And I thought it was quite odd, but I know the guy who asked the question was a suspected white supremacist. I was in the elevator, actually heading up to my office, and there was a group of people in the elevator as well. I was the only black guy in the elevator. And this gentleman and I happened to be going on the same floor. So he waited till everybody got off the elevator. And the moment we got to our floor, he stopped me and asked me, hey, I want to ask you a question. What do you think about Donald Trump? And I just thought that was kind of like, why'd you ask me that question? You know, I said, I think that's a very odd question to ask somebody. He said, no, I wasn't trying to offend you. I just wanted to ask, if somebody their thoughts on Donald Trump. And I just thought that was very, very interesting. I told him my thoughts didn't matter. Whatever he thought was the best answer. But I told him I didn't have any thoughts on it, trying not to engage him. I felt like he was engaging me to get a reaction out of him. So trying to be codified, I kind of just sidestepped it and told him I wasn't interested in answering his question. But whatever he thought about Donald Trump, I guess that's good. But I just thought that was kind of odd. I'm going to go ahead and leave my line. Thank you.
That is something I think it might be wise for black people. If you know you work around white people, and you particularly if you have white people, I think some of our listeners over the years have said that they do have suspected racists on their job who like to bring up politics. It's like they're studying them. I want to hear what this nigga thinks about racism. I want to hear what they think on, our president. Take some more notes. Know, how my niggers are doing on the plantation to be prepared for how you're going to respond if they should ask you about Trump or any other aspect of politics. What did you think about President Obama? I think Mr. Fuller, I've heard him give some great responses to that. What do you think about Trump? I think he's president. Well, what do you think of, his policies? Which policies specifically are you talking about? I think he's president and he's doing what he's doing. You also, I think Emmy, she's with us as well. I think she codified her response. I don't discuss politics on the job. Oh, but this is just us. It's just us on the elevator, and this is not anything serious. I was just I don't discuss politics on the job. And if they put, well, my floor is here, I'll see you later, Bob. And just leave it at that. That's all you ever say. It's a lot of different routes that you can take. Whatever it is, I would say just make sure that you are not surprised, because that's one of the tactics that I've seen whites. They will try and do that, to just ask you a question like that, to pick your brain, as they say. They love to do that sort of thing. Just don't be surprised. And even better, you can already have a response. You know Trump is something that they might ask about, or just who you're going to vote for, that sort of thing. Already have that. What do you think about the anthem thing? They might ask about that. You already have your response in mind. Whatever it's going to be, you already have it, and just stick to it. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary on what we've heard thus far, or if you have your own situation that you want to address, the line should be open. Proceed.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, and to the callers and listeners. This is a black female from New York. With regard to your question from last week, what would prevent you from practicing your codification in the workplace? The first thing that came to my mind was alienation, in that, you don't want to be seen, don't want to seem as if you're not, quote unquote, a team player. I think you mentioned that last week, something like peer pressure. Because I can recall being codified, and you get glimpses of other non-white black people on the job who kind of sense that you're codified, or they sense that you do things a little bit differently, and they may come out and give you little tidbits of their own counter-racism. They may do it privately with you, but as someone who does practice codification. But when it comes to actually practicing it themselves in a constructive way, and literally doing that as a normal everyday function as a part of their responsibilities, they don't do it, because they see you're the nigger that doesn't have anybody asking them out to lunch. They see that you're the nigger that nobody even bothers to invite you to the baby showers and the parties anymore, because they know you're going to say no, and they certainly don't want to be subjected to that treatment. And they also see that you're the nigger that also gets passed over for all of the promotions, and that's definitely not the track that they want to be on. So I believe that alienation and peer pressure is a huge part of why one may not practice codification in the workplace. As for me, today I had a very interesting situation. I am a substitute teacher, and I had I was a science class today, and they were a very smart class. And the teacher kind of reminded me of Walter White for some reason, especially when one kid asked him, told him that he needed some ammonium chlorhydrate for something. The teacher goes, I can get you whatever you need. Anyway, I had my Breaking Bad laugh. And there was a white girl, and she was speaking within, most of everybody in the class was, quote unquote, what white people would classify as East Indian. And there was this one white girl there, and for some reason I sensed that she was on some sort of medication, because she was really hyper, that kind of that manic depressive type personality. And she walks in the classroom and she looks at me. She goes, "Oh, hi!" And, I said hello, and in the back of my head I was like, okay, this is going to be the one. Anyway, she goes to she's talking with her classmate, who is this East Indian person. Now, meanwhile, the entire time, because the teacher was there for part of the time that I was there, because he was grabbing some folks together to go on a field trip. So he was still there for about 10 minutes of the time that I was there. And they were just talking normally and what have you, no big deal. As soon as he left, the white girl's conversation switched to, oh, I need some more color on my face. Oh, maybe I'm gonna try that really, really dark foundation. And the Indian girl's like, oh my God, no, don't do that. And the white girl goes, oh no, I want to look like you. She goes, oh no, don't do that. Lighten it up some. So, they went to this big, big thing about skin tone. Then she starts talking about her hair. But anyway, all of this occurred as I sat down in the teacher's desk, which was kind of like next to the white girl. So that was just my little incident that I had today with my workplace racism. I kind of laughed it off, and, I just sat there and did what I was supposed to do and got paid. And I practiced my codification. And I told them to have a wonderful day. That's all I had. I'll mute my line.
Outstanding. That is I think not being surprised, at least in my view, I think that goes a long way to helping you be able to take that stance where you can just see these things happen. You make note, have a wonderful day, and keep on moving. Like, you can help minimize your stress level and just not being surprised about any of this. Whatever is said, it's just confirming, yes, we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, and many of the things that we talk about on a regular basis, that this is based in truth. That's the way that I think about it. In terms of you were talking about some of the things that keep you from, at times, practicing codification in the workplace, going back to peer pressure and feeling alienated from other black people sometimes, or fearing that that's what's going to happen if they see you being passed over for promotions and that sort of thing, that we're not going to mess around with this person. I think Mr. Fuller would encourage that even if the other black people don't mess with you, because I think he had said that he's seen and heard some of that. If you don't participate in all the jokes or going out to get drinks and the uncodified typical workplace culture, that might stick out and they might not want to hang out with you or what have you. But if you can stick with being codified, he said, at least in his experience, some of the black people that are not being codified, you're able to stay on the job, stay quiet, no problems. They might come around and want to talk to you, particularly if they're having an issue. They might want to come and talk to you when they want to maybe hear someone who's going to be logical about things. He said he's seen that as well. And also, I think, too, since this came up so many times, that fear of being alienated or not included, I guess, feeling like you're kind of being shunned somewhat in the workplace. Same thing that our black female caller in New York just said, have a wonderful day. You don't have to, I guess, emphasize it that much if you don't want to, but I definitely encourage making sure your codification includes making sure that you do acknowledge the other people that are there. Codification, at least for me, is not about being a mute on the job. It doesn't mean that you no longer converse with anyone at all. It just means that we're making sure that what we're talking about, not just going to be having casual conversation. We're not going to be talking about President Trump, who I voted for, where I'm going on vacation, what my children's asked for. No, we have certain things that we talk about, certain things that we don't talk about, certain people that I might engage more conversation with, certain people that I don't. Everything is very measured to make sure that you always get the best result. At least in my opinion, that's supposed to be part of the essence of codification. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary you want to share, your own situation or some of the things that have been shared thus far, feel free. Line should be open.
Happy heard.
Big Victim, good to hear from you, sir.
Thank you, Gus. I have a victim on my conference call. She doesn't want to talk, but she wants me to share her situation. She's having a situation.
Is it possible that you could speak up, sir? That would be helpful.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. That's better.
She doesn't want to talk, but she's on my conference call. But she wants me to share her situation. She's having a problem with a coworker. They had a relationship, but she's broken off the relationship. He's a non-white male, and now he's harassing her, and He's threatened to share some of her stories she had, which they used to talk about the white people on the job. And he has threatened to go tell some of the white people what she has said about them. And she's really uptight, thinking that he might go do it. I gave I gave the advice where I took the position of people to do anything nowadays. I don't know what to tell you, but if you can share some, give us some advice, she'll be grateful. Thanks for letting me share for her.
For sure. I guess if she can hear us, sorry that happened. I'm getting some, maybe a big victim, if you can mute really quick. Oh, okay, never mind. Not hearing it. Thank you, sir. The female victim that I guess is having this problem, if she can hear us, I think you said that you're on conference. If she can hear us, I'm sorry that you're having to go through that. This is one of those situations. Some of our callers, investors over the years, Lashes and some of the other folks who have said, hey, I don't care how much melanin you have. I am not talking to anybody on my job about racism ever. That's just, the code forever. I think this might be an illustration of why. I totally understand. That's why I presented this. It's not unanimous. We've had a lot of people, Roz and some of the folks that are on the line this evening, who've said, hey, if it's a black person on the job, I'll talk to them. I'll see if we can develop a rapport, and I'll try and share information with them about racism. I try and help out other black people. I think Emmy has done that as well. I always think that's black self-respect. And equally, I totally understand the counter-racist logic of saying, hey, in a work environment, I do not have friends. I do not have sisters and brothers. Even if this is another black person, in this environment, we have been conditioned and trained to abuse one another, to, quote, snitch on each other, as they say. I'll go and tell white people on you and see if, I can keep my job for a few extra hours, maybe get a few extra nickels on my check or what have you. That's, been years of them grooming us to behave in that manner. So we can't really be surprised that still happens regularly, frequently in the system of white supremacy. So in terms of what to do, I guess it's to me, it seems it's not a whole lot that you can do, at least at this point. If he's threatening to do this, that he's going to go tell white people that you said, this, that, and the fourth. To me, it seems that there's not a whole lot that you can do until he chooses to do so. If he doesn't do anything about it, or if white people don't choose to make an issue of this, then, it doesn't seem like this is one that you can take a proactive stance. To me, it also seems, since this is just going to be rumor, I don't know that you would have any immediate problems. I don't know that whites could come in, regardless of where this alleged conversation took place, whatever he's threatening to share. I don't know that they could legally do a whole lot. It's just gossip, basically. I guess now it could, if he decides to do this, I guess it could have the effect of maybe getting them vindictive so that they pay more attention to you, that sort of thing. I guess that could happen. But at least at this point, it doesn't seem like one of those things that you could do anything about. If he does do this, and the white people do come to say something to you about it, certainly you can take the position of just saying, I'm not even sure what you're talking about. I don't remember any sort of conversation of that nature, but I find it hard to believe it would even get to that point. Maybe I'm being naive. Some of the other folks that are listening in, do you have thoughts about this in terms of what you would do moving forward? We've got a black female. She says it was a non-white person on the job. I guess they were associates at least they had contact that was amiable at one point, and she shared some of her thoughts about racism. And now they've had some sort of conflict, and apparently the non-white person is threatening to go tell their white coworkers her views. She's wanting to know what to do. Any suggestions from other listeners?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
The first I was trying to understand the context, what Big Victim was stating in reference to the nature of their relationship, but I think one of the main things is that she develops some sort of consistent behavior pattern with dealing with this individual from here on out. And I understand it might be I'm just not going to talk to him, but just making sure that she's being consistent with that. And then the second thing is I kind of agree with Gus because it seems like his behavior and what he's saying is very inconsistent. So you really don't even know what's going to come. And I think the other unfortunate thing is that he actually thinks that he's going to make trouble for her with white people. And as a victim of racism, I think one of the main things is that he's making trouble for all the non-white people. And I think that's one of the bad things about the conditioning that we have. But I just think her just being real codified, standing her ground, understanding exactly what she said. And I'm with you. What's the recollection? I don't recall any of that, but I kind of agree with Gus. I don't necessarily even know that it'll get to that point, but you can never suspect. Unfortunately, people do anything. But I just think her being main codified, no contact, no conflict is the best way to move forward. But for her just to be aware of his behavior and then just be prepared what comes down the pipe, because it sounds like he say, she say. That's all I got.
Appreciate that. Any other folks with suggestions on, the best way to deal with this moving forward?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Black female caller in New York.
Thank you. To the young lady, I really am sorry that you are going through that. And I don't know what the nature of your relationship is. I believe I have some idea, but it appears as if there's a lot of fear involved. Your fear of course, what the repercussions may be from white people, and also there seems to be some fear of this coworker that you had this relationship with. What I would do, and take this for what it's worth, I would deny it. If he did something, and he just may be doing this to hold, if it was some sort of romantic relationship, he may be doing this just to hold on to you, or to get back at you for something. If that was a type of relationship, if it was that type of relationship, if not, if it was just some other kind of relationship, But I would just try to get a hold of that fear. I would try to deal with that fear, but I would also, if he did something like that, and I don't think that he will for some reason, I'm with Gus on that. I believe that you should deny it. You should just say, I don't know, if he hasn't recorded you, if he hasn't videotaped anything, he has no solid evidence. He doesn't have any written statements from you, signed appraisals signed confessions or anything like that. I would just deny it. And I do agree with the previous male caller. He's going to make more trouble, not only for you, but I also believe he's going to make a lot of trouble for himself. Because if I know white people, all the Negroes are acting up, we're going to get them all. Everybody's going to, suffer for this. But I believe that he's going to cause more trouble for himself. But like I said, I would just deny everything. And that's all I had. I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that. We have other folks with suggestions on how you would deal with this going forward. I was unclear if there was a sexual relationship with these two previously. Myself, I was not sure. That certainly can impact, and I think some people, they make that a part of their code as well. No sexual. Oh, I'm sorry, Big Victor.
Yes, it was a romantic relationship. Now she broke it off, and I told her I think he's trying to blackmail you to get back with you. Yes, it was a romantic relationship.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I would say, until I hear from white people, I would take the position that he is bluffing, that he's doing this to be manipulative, as the black female caller in New York said. he would have to prove that he's going to go and do this. Because if there was any sort, I don't know if they met on the job or if they were together before that, but if that's what this is, and anybody else on the job knows that there was some sort of sexual arrangement between the two of you, I don't think that that's going to go very. He would, as was already stated, I think he may end up causing more trouble for himself than he would for you. I would just, until I hear otherwise from someone on the job in an official capacity, I would just take the position that he's bluffing, and I would go about my business and maintain no contact. I think that would be the logical way to proceed until you hear otherwise, unless I am in error. With that, I guess that additional bit of information, anybody want to update their suggestion or any other suggestions they want to offer?
Hi, Gus.
Stacy in England. Good to hear from you, ma'am.
Hi. I just wanted to agree with what everyone else has said. It does sound like he's bluffing, and probably won't. I mean, you can never tell how people in the workplace will respond, because I don't think there could be an official response to him going and telling managers that she said X, Y, Z, because it would just be hearsay and gossip. However, it just seems very controlling. I think she should try as hard as she can to keep her distance. I think when people think that they can control you and undermine you, and you project any sign of fear, it is, they're going to take advantage of that. And she does have options, because actually he's harassing her. And it's bordering on the sort of, certainly controlling and abusive behaviour. So she does have options outside of the workplace should that continue. I.e., if he's harassing her, it's potentially criminal anyway. So, I mean, she does have other options, and I think he's just trying to control her anyway. So, my advice would not to immediately respond to it, and try and keep her distance as much as she can. I'll mute my line, Gus.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Just to add to suggestions based on the question earlier about the lady and the gentleman who had the intimate relationship on the job. Just going forward, no matter how much sexual tension you guys might have on the job, going forward, it's not constructive to have intimate relationships with anybody on the job, black and especially a white person. So that's the first step going forward. Just learn from this. Learn from this situation. Going forward, just try not to have any sexual relations with anybody on the job, because it's not constructive to do that. I know there's a lot of sexual tension many times, but it's always good to stay away from sexual tension on the job. So sexual relationship is always a no-no. I'll go ahead and get up to you. Thanks.
Appreciate that. As I stated, some folks, that is a part of their counter-racist code for any work situation, and as was stated, white or non-white, no sexual intercourse with coworkers. I know that's not the case for everyone, and I do know non-white people who ended up marrying somebody that they worked with. That happens quite a bit too, but I have also seen where that can go really, really bad. And I also think it's important just for folks to remember, when you're in a work situation, anytime that you're speaking with a coworker, whether it's on the job or after hours, whatever I'm saying to this person, am I comfortable with every person in the company knowing, hearing what I said? That's the way that we should think. Whether it's a white person, a non-white person, if you all are at the bar at 2 o'clock in the morning, you all are at the beach, you all are nude in bed together. Whatever I'm telling this person who is a coworker, we do work together. We are together for 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, in an official employment capacity. Whatever I say to this person, am I comfortable with them going back and reporting it to everybody, having an official memo, email, company letterhead, the whole nine, date, time? This is what I said. If you're not, then maybe you should think really hard about whether or not you want to say that to that person. I think unfortunately, this is a system of white supremacy, and these types of situations this is not the first time that this sort of thing has happened. So that's the way that I encourage black people to think on the job, and that in my view, the threshold for trusting a non-white person on the job is astronomically high, to the point where we can sit down and have frank conversation about my views on white supremacy, racism. Do we have any other suggestions on this situation specifically?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I actually just wanted to add, I think that as far as just what Gus had just said about not really, or suspecting or not really trusting what your coworkers, not really trusting your coworkers, especially if you're saying something outside of the job. And that was actually the reason why, this is Ref Ohio, why I actually responded the way that I did to what a coworker had said, because even if, like I've really been planning on, leaving the job, I still would not want, I don't know if like other jobs still do the whole like reference thing. I would not want, because like they do have a particular way of communicating, even if there's not something that they really have to share to like a prospective employer of an ex-employee. So that's the reason why I just, try to keep it as short as possible, and even like, going forward. And I definitely agree with what everyone else has been saying about the sexual contact between coworkers. I've also seen that at my job, more so with two non-white people. One, there was a non-white female who I kind of conversed with more. She had or is still having a relationship with another non-white person, a non-white male, and it seems like it's not only entertainment for the non-white people, but it's entertainment for the white people too. Like, well, no, it's not a cowbell. It's not a cowbell. It's two black people, a black female and a black male. But it's kind of like it's like entertainment for everybody at the job. Well, okay, well, what is this male doing? And then they like to go back to her and, kind of talk to her about it. And then on the other hand, there's a black male at the job, a different black male. And, he basically had a reputation of just, having sexual contact with a bunch of different females. And that kind of, has followed him no matter where he's moved throughout the company. So I definitely would never engage with something like that. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Red. Yeah, I have seen that, and conversely, I've seen for suspected racists where they can engage in all sorts of sexual debauchery, and it doesn't seem to disrupt their career advancement to the same level as it does for black people. I think Anthony Weiner, he had to get caught repeatedly and doing in all kinds of lewd conduct and sexually exploiting children and everything before it finally ruined his career opportunities, briefly at least. Do we have other folks who had commentary they were going to share? Line should be open on this specific situation before we move forward. Any other commentary folks are going to share on this situation? Assume we got all the suggestions for this one. I guess, Big Victim, you can let us know how things proceed with that. Definitely encourage no contact, regardless of what happens with the situation, but definitely no contact with the male in question. I think in this case, it would definitely be. There's nothing else to say. Like if threats are being made, of that level, then this is not anything that needs to be continued moving forward.
Will do.
Indeed. The number again, 641-715-3640, and the code 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Other folks have commentary they would like to share, your own situation. Line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, guys, and listeners. This is Diane from Ohio as well. I called in, I think it's been about a month ago, because I was, dealing with policing and different things at my job. I just wanted to, give an update. And I've just kind of navigated it. I've kind of learned how to be less tense and to be aware of the strategies that I know are in play. One thing that I am kind of questioning myself about is I feel like I have to be disingenuous a lot of times, just because, and not that I go out of my way to communicate, with coworkers, but the way everything's set up, we have to communicate. So sometimes I'll communicate and I notice that you kind of get caught up in the conversations and different things that happen, and then I have to kind of pull myself back because I don't. The one thing that always sticks with me is the phrase, they like to disarm you with kindness. So I'm actually more alert when non-white people white people are kind and, just kind of more embracing. It causes me to kind of be on more of a alert. But I guess I'm just kind of struggling with, because I try to be a genuine, authentic person, but I know that in the arena that I'm in, there was a caller who mentioned that, and it's definitely not a fear of being rejected or not being invited out or anything, but sometimes I just wonder if you are too shut off, will that kind of put you on the radar as well? Will that make you a target as well? And then somebody made a comment earlier today about, I can't think of verbatim what they said, but just about, communicating and dealing with fellow coworkers. I'm just going to use this as a small example. I've made it a kind of a priority to eat more healthy. So a lot of the things that I used to indulge in, I don't anymore. And the other day I was with my sister and she got, fried chicken from a takeout spot. And it smelled absolutely delicious. Now, I know I did not want this chicken. I didn't desire it. But the smell of it, out of habit, it made me crave it. It made me want it. And I just simply told myself, you don't want this chicken. You just, the fragrance is kind of drawing you in. It's tempting because it's there. The fragrance of it is making you think that you want it. So that is something that I'm using in my work environment as well, with the communion and the jokes and, everybody seems to be talking and I'm just kind of like not really grafted in. I don't desire a relationship with these people. I don't desire communion with them, but the fragrance of that around you kind of sometimes makes you think that you want that. But I definitely don't want it because I know that it more than likely is going to be unhealthy for me. So that's something that I'm using to help me. I'm hearing you guys use the word codification. I've listened to several of Nilly Fuller's videos. I'm not really familiar with the exact term of codification, but I am going to research it. But it's just my way of navigating, in the surroundings that I am aware of. And with that, I'm going to end my line. Thank you. Or mute my line. Thanks.
Wow. Fried chicken metaphor for workplace racism. Wonderful. Wow. When I say codification, and you can, if you're already familiar with Mr. Fuller's concepts, you've heard him before, what have you, you can certainly check his literature, his code book, and the word guide, where he defines the term explicitly, unambiguously. We also have talked about it on the program. I think Mr. Edward Williams, who also has written a book about counter-racism in the workplace, where he has, on the program, on this broadcast, defined the concept of codification. When I say codification, especially in the context of the workplace, it just means figuring out the best way to do something to solve a problem without creating new problems. And then you do it that way consistently. You do it that way every time. So in the context of the workplace, the example that I already gave in terms of people should codify a response. If someone comes on a job and says, hey, Diane, what do you think about President Trump? You should codify a response, meaning what's the best way I can respond to this consistently every time, and it will always work out to my benefit. I'm not going to say I think he's a no good, dirty cracker, because that's not going to work out to my benefit. I'm going to figure out, hey, I can say I don't discuss politics. I think I can say that every time, and I will not get in trouble. I think I'll be able to use that every day. I don't think there's a situation where I can use that and I will be harmed, where someone will fuss at me, or I'll get written up or fired, or I'll miss a promotion because I refuse to talk about politics on the job. That's codification, that you can work according to your views, according to where you work at, your personality. You can work out, we should all be working out our own individual code for how we function on the job, that is applying our view, our perspective on counter-racism, and is working to make sure we minimize the opportunities for racists to harm us. That's what I mean by codification, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Diane?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does, and that's absolutely how I try to operate in all aspects of my life. And I guess that kind of maybe goes back to where I kind of have this. It's not predominant, but sometimes I wonder about my, just me being disingenuous. When I say that, I think I'm not, because a lot of times I don't want to even communicate with some of my white coworkers. I'm very aware of, how they navigate and how they're operating. But, I know that in the best interest, I don't want to call it fake, but I guess it's codification. I try not to share too much. I definitely do, try as much as possible to stay focused on my job. But then, I just noticed that even to me, it just seems like in a way you have to be fake with white people, because that's how they operate. They definitely operate in disingenuousness, just, falseness. And in my mind, I'm just like, well, that's what I'm going to give back to you. Not like purposely trying to do that, but I'm not going to divulge into you anything extra. I'm not going to, if you say something funny, as long as it's not off bounds, I might, laugh at it and pretend I'm interested, for the most part, for just, as much as I feel necessary. But other than that, I'm going to pull back. And so I guess that's the balance that I'm dealing with right now, is just, when I leave and I shake that off, I just feel like, I'm really dedicated to and committed to that now. So I guess I'm kind of, in my spirit, dealing with that resolve of, this is what I have to do to continue to make progress the way that I want to make progress. So, it definitely makes sense, but I guess sometimes I still battle with myself of, just having to be that way to do what I have to do.
I suspect a good number of our listeners, victims of white supremacy, have felt the same way. One thing, at least for me, I think it might be helpful in terms of the way that we think about it. I don't think of it as being disingenuous with whites in the workplace. I think in a system of white supremacy, racism is war, white people waging war against us. I am not friendly. I am not looking to share all of this information with them. I don't look at it as me being disingenuous. I just look at it as this is a war situation where they're waging war against me. How would I function with someone who is hostile to me? I am not going to share every bit of information with them. I don't view that as being disingenuous. If this was somebody that I was trying to take advantage of, and I was trying to manipulate them somehow for some money or to harm them in some way, then I'd say, oh yeah, I'm being disingenuous. But I don't think of it as that as all. They are aggressing against us. They're being hostile against us. We're operating more from a defensive position. These folks have not shown themselves to be allies to black people anywhere in the world, anywhere for the last 1,000 years or however long you want to go back. So, yeah, I just think of it more as this is a logical and defensive position to take. And I just have to be very much on guard with how I function around you, what I say around you, even the conversations that I engage in when I'm in this environment, because I am in a dangerous position. I am not amongst friends, and I just put that at the forefront. If I was around friends, if I was around people, and I was looking to do something nefarious, yes, and disingenuous, I think would be a more correct term, but that is not the case. When you're around racists, you are in hostile territory. You are doing the logical thing. Did other folks have any thoughts they wanted to share with Diane on that one, in terms of just that sort of feeling, in terms of how we have to function in a work environment where you might feel that you can't open up, disingenuous, as you say? Anyone have any thoughts they want to share with her on that?
I had something. I'm sorry. You can go first.
I thought it was ladies first. Gus, doesn't matter.
Yes. We'll get Red first.
I'm sorry. Just real quick, and thank you. I actually have been trying to, I guess you would say, like, mimic how white people act towards me, because I feel like that is a part of their code. If they know more about racism than we do, I feel like that goes back to what other people have been saying, and what I have been doing recently is studying white people. So to hopefully help build up my counter-racist strategy. So I think that that's the perfect way to act. I think there's not a better way to act. You give it to them like they're giving it back to you. I don't think that it's disingenuous or anything. And just definitely, like what Gus said, these people are not our friends. These people don't really have our best intentions at heart. Just basically what you've been saying before. I think you might have mentioned the story before, how like these white women would kind of I guess seduce, for lack of a better term, like the black males around you, just to show that they are more powerful than you. These people aren't here to be friendly to you, to be nice or anything like that. So I think that if they are treating you fake, then you give them back that same type of fake atmosphere, and you just leave you leave that at the job. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Great point. I guess you could add, nobody is more disingenuous than all of the white people who said, oh, there's no way Trump could be president. That is disingenuous. The male caller, thank you for your patience.
Oh, now you good, guys. I think most victims on this call, if we're truthful, and I know I'll include myself, but was talking about the term disingenuous. In my opinion, I think what it really comes down to is that central question: do I believe that all white people are racist or can be suspected racist? Because then disingenuous, that word almost goes out it just goes out the window. It's a metaphor, but because you're not viewing them as someone that could potentially maybe help you, and then you're not feeling as, well, yeah, I'm being fake towards this person because I'm really being my real self, because maybe this individual might be able to help me. Typically, when I know, just speaking for myself, when I got honest about that, it made things a whole lot easier, because then you can just be codified and you're not worried about being disingenuous, because you might just, like Mr. Fuller says, you might just be friendly, you might just be courteous, but you're not giving out any additional information, not because you're being fake, is because typically what happens is that non-white people are harmed when they're being honest with white people, because they use that against you. So that's just the main thing, and to ask yourself that question. And for a lot of victims, every day it's hard, because, and Gus talks about that frequently on every program, when they're being nice, that does not mean that they're not practicing racism. And that's a really hard thing, not only everybody on this call, but if we just look at the results, black people around the world. And so that's just what I wanted to share. It really just comes down to that core, in my opinion, just that core question that you have to ask yourself. And then if you believe that, I believe that your typically the behavior goes along according with that. So.
Did other folks have commentary that they wanted to share?
Hi, Gus.
Stacy in London. Yes, ma'am.
And hello. Sorry. Hello to everybody else on the call. Can I give my update?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just before I do, I just want to say I agree 100% with the last caller. And I think her name was Diane. I think she had probably given herself the answer at the beginning of what she said, in that typically when people are being nice, it's usually because they want something, and eventually that niceness will disappear when they're ready to enact whatever act of terrorism they were planning to do anyway. And I guess it's what the last caller said, but in a slightly different way. I do think sometimes we have an emotional attachment, which is probably that we think these suspected racists are going to be nice or useful to us at some point in the future. Remove the emotion out of it and just treat it as your workplace skill. This is how I behave in the workplace. In the same way that, you know, we're being told that we need to communicate, be a team player. Just add it to your toolbox as one of your other workplace skills, and just remove the emotion out of it. In terms of my update, I think the last time I called in about the situation that I am dealing with, being accused of shouting at a colleague, then having managers try and use that as a way of undermining me, and I've challenged it. I'm at the stage where it's a grievance. I've also had a director push into me, and them also trying to use a non-white female as the way in which they can enact their racism against me. I was surprised a couple of weeks ago. What I'd done is I'd gone to my doctor because of some correspondence I'd received from HR. I eventually sent the letter in from my doctor, basically saying that I've been dealing with this situation. They were planning to send me back to the team that I was originally in, because I'm temporarily based in another team because of what has happened, and while the grievance is being processed, or rather, when I submit it. And I didn't hear anything back immediately, but then I spoke to my union rep, and he actually asked me, do I want to see if they can get me time off work, which would be classed as sickness, which was something that I was quite concerned about. Needless to say, that has happened. So this week I've been out of the office. They technically gave me leave so that I could focus on actually submitting the grievance documentation, because I hadn't done it, and it's not that I was avoiding doing it in the sense that I changed my mind. It was literally just, it's a lot of trauma, and there are a lot of incidences that I've been dealing with, and it's just having to go back through all of what has happened has been quite difficult for me. And it will be actually more than one grievance that I'm going to submit. So I did submit the first one today. The next one to go in will be the director and her aggression. So that one is going in. But it has been useful to have been given that time out of the office to just be able to focus on it. I mean, I don't know what the position is in the US, but in the UK, and certainly in terms of my employer, you have a 3-month period where they want you to report any instances that have happened. So they try and say that there's a timeout if it happened 3 months, so longer than 3 months, then they use it as a way of not. It's a timeout on anything that's happened, which I think is discriminatory in itself, not least because when you are dealing with ongoing and repeated acts of terrorism and people have a position of authority over you and it can affect your livelihood or other things, it's not always easy to just decide, okay, well, I'm going to go and submit a grievance, and plus you have to prove it. You can't. It's not just a case of going and making a complaint. You're going to have to go through an investigation. So, so part of what I've had to do is to think through, okay, how am I going to structure the grievance to ensure that all the issues are covered and there is a history that has been, or rather there's a history to what has gone on, which for me has been 3 years. But it was good news that they gave me the week off to work on that grievances. I'm probably going to take, I'm due to go back on Monday. I'm probably going to take Monday off as well, because I've definitely got one more that I want to submit, but there are 2 others that I'm going to try and squeeze in because I do not want anyone to get away with what they've been doing to me for quite some time. I'll mute my line there, Gus.
Wow. Context of white supremacy. When stating, and I think for folks who have not been listening to the cows for a long time, Stacy has been sharing with us for almost a year now. I think she started participating. I guess I can do my timestamp thing. So it is 2:34 a.m. London time, 2:34 a.m. Friday morning for Stacy, who is participating live with us. But she's been joining us live for workplace racism for almost a year with this situation, yelled at by a white man, and then they get a black employee to come in and address some of these issues and harassed, terrorized violently by other employees in the building to just keep going through all of this. I mean, it is an extraordinary strain. Again, black mental health. It exacts an extraordinary toll on us, and then even just trying to do the paperwork and go through to try to get some sort of redress for all of this abuse, that also exacts a toll. You have to go back through all of these incidents and rehash and retell, probably repeatedly, how you got mistreated. What were you doing on the day that this white woman came down the hall and shoved you out of the way repeatedly? What were you doing on this day when you got falsely accused of this job, which might impact your employment, your livelihood, to keep rewriting it, retelling it, often to people who are hostile to you and do not believe you? All of that takes a toll. And a lot of times that in and of itself, it's not like they're going to give you, or at least it sounds like with Stacey, she did get extra time, but a lot of times they're not trying to give you a few extra days off to do the paperwork or to recoup, do some self-maintenance, self-care, so that you can be replenished and ready to work. They have a variety of ways of making it a very excruciating experience for us on the job. And I would say if you're going to do the paperwork, we talk about that all the time, documenting and trying to minimize the abuse that you face on the job. If you're going to do a formal process, when they have you submit a quote unquote grievance, or even if you're going to talk to an attorney, it could be a very long process. Have that in mind and make sure, hey, I'm going to have the stamina. I'm going to do things to make sure that I can maintain myself, because this could be a very long, unpleasant process to get to the finish line. I think that's important to be truthful about that before you get involved. Any comments folks want to get in? What Stacey had to share? years of reporting. If you go back in the archives, you'll hear lots of different reports, different times as we go month to month, week to week with the updates. The other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you had commentary you wanted to share, your line should be open. Proceed.
Gus, sorry, just before you go on to somebody else, I just wanted to say on the documentation, I guess, because sometimes I go back and I think, oh, how can I give a bit of advice to people on some of the things that I've been sharing? And what I would say in terms of any process, I mean, certainly on the COWS, we talk about keeping records and documenting. It is traumatic, but it may be the case that you never ever end up going through any kind of formal process, and that's great if you don't have to. But what I would say is try and get your paperwork in order, or have some kind of mechanism for filing anything that you're recording, because it's, as you said, it's been traumatic just going back and thinking about all the things that have happened and the emotions attached to all of those things. But the process of having to submit a grievance and select evidence and examples of evidence examples, that in itself is quite challenging, and if you haven't been systematic about it, it's not the most enjoyable thing to do. I certainly didn't want to do it. I mean, I definitely record everything, and have notes and things like that, but at the same time I wasn't necessarily very structured about it. So that hopefully that's a useful bit of advice for people listening in. I'll mute my line.
That I would definitely concur with that in terms of making sure you're organized with your notes, documentation that can be helpful in moving forward. Particularly, again, you can see the situation with Stacy has taken a year, and I think we have a number of other folks who've been dealing with situations that are long running. A lot of times these things are not resolved in a day or a week or a month even. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
All right. Greetings, Gus, and to all the callers and listeners. This kind of goes back to the previous comment that was made by the female caller, speaking in terms of, I guess, being disingenuine. I just want to quote, I guess, if you will, a metaphor, if it's okay to employ a metaphor here, Gus.
Oh, for sure. That's only on the compensatory call then.
All right. And so in the book, I know you all did this in the book club a while back, but How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the idioms that was used is that you can catch more flies or bees. You can catch more bees with honey than with vinegar. And I think that that's a common approach that's taken on by many suspected racists. And they may come to you with one thing that seems as if they're being nice and being kind and everything. But again, ultimately, their goal is usually to practice the system of racism, white supremacy. And so I just wanted to put that out there just as a reminder. I don't think that we should feel guilty. We shouldn't feel as if we are doing something incorrect by not taking that on in terms of being nice and being genuine, but at the same time, you don't have to compromise and give anything more than what is it than what you would in being codified. Thank you.
Great point. Great point. I think, too, a lot of times we end up feeling some type of way because so many of us, I know it's not just Diane, so many of us get accused. Even Gus T, it's happened to me as well, get accused of being, what did they say, standoffish, aloof, you're not a team player, and that sort of thing. you don't even have to be being codified per se. You can just be a black person and I'm just here and I'm trying to do my work, and they do that so regularly. It seems like it's such a requirement for many jobs that if you're a black person, they want you to entertain them, they want you to gossip and tell them everything about your life so that they can very easily know as much information as they need to about you to keep you controlled and whatever else they want to do with the job situation. But I think for counter-racist purposes, just again to make sure it's emphasized that it's, at least for me, codification is not about being silent. It's not about ignoring everybody on the job. Speak to folks. Morning, Helen, Todd, you can speak to people. You can even ask questions. I've suggested many times asking and finding out information about what's happening so you can be more informed about the environment in which you work. Being codified on the job shouldn't be synonymous with being silent, being mum, not saying a word. It's just you are very strategic about the talking that you do. Other folks have commentary that they wanted to share?
Gus, can I ask a question? This is the black female caller from New York again. What about appearance? Like your attire? I always kind of tied that into my own black self-respect. I've frequently noticed that racists, they can come to work any old way that they want to come to work. I mean, as a matter of fact, I had gone to an orientation for the job that I presently have, and I counted the amount of people in the room, and I think there were like about 6 people in the room for this particular orientation. And out of those 16 people, I think there were maybe 4 white people. Everyone else was black. And we all were dressed as if we were going to a professional orientation. And the white people were dressed like they were going to the store on Saturday morning. I mean, literally. Some of them had shorts and sandals on. All of us had on suits, dresses and skirts. Even the 2 black males that were there, they had on ties. And those white people had on like flip-flops and whatever, and they didn't get they got the job, they were there for the orientation for the job just like we were. Now, I also believe that like when you're on these plantations that, if part of your codification is, I'm not going to dress for the job that I have, I'm going to dress for the job that I want, later on. But everybody else is not dressing like that. You might get other black people that come up to you and, why are you dressed up today? And you're like, man, I just put on, a clean dress and I ironed it and some shoes, and I just think that that's a part of codification as well. I mean, that's just my opinion. I just wanted to put that one out there and just get anybody's feedback on it. I'll mute my line.
Folks have any thoughts on attire in terms of what we are wearing contrasted to what we see race soldiers wearing on the job?
Hi, Gus.
Stacy in the UK.
I this one is, I could spend a whole program on this one. I don't think it's one where non-white people can win. I certainly don't think, unless you're working in a job where shorts is your uniform, that even if there were lots of suspected racists or just white people in an event or training or whatever with shorts on, that the same would apply to non-white people. And I've been in that situation where I was wearing a dress and the so-called she's not a suspected racist, she's a racist, commented about me looking very, very sexy in the dress. And it's a dress that there is a white female who also had pretty much the same dress. I think it was a different brand, but it was the same dress. And no such comments were made to her. And I've faced that so many times. It's not about how much you spend on your clothes. I've been in the office wearing things which were pretty much, I think Walmart is one of your cheapest stores. We have other similar types of shops in the UK. I've had more expensive things on, and people comment. I don't think you can win, but I certainly wouldn't get too comfortable and start dressing, in anything that you would wear to the supermarket on the weekend, unless that is the uniform of the organisation that you work for. I'll mute my line, Gus.
Context of White Supremacy. I think if folks recall, the very first time Mr. Fuller was a guest on this program, May of 2009, he said that there was a white woman on his job, and she used to just dress terribly. Just looked like she just rolled out of bed and didn't turn the light on and just randomly grabbed things out of the closet, wrinkled, whatever. And he said that these black people were laughing about her attire on the elevator, and she just turned around and looked at them and said, "Yeah, but I'm still white." And that ended all of the snickering and ended the whole conversation. I think that still applies and will, as long as the system of white supremacy exists. I've seen the same pattern. I would definitely not encourage non-white people to think that we can emulate that on the job. I think for us, I think I've even said before, I would get, whatever attire you want to wear and just wear the same thing, because I've seen where that can end up taking on a lot of unnecessary time and attention and energy. Attire in the workplace, and even white people commenting on what you're wearing, and the whole job thing can even become a fashion show. I think the balance is just figure out, this is what I can wear where I'm in compliance. I think Mr. Steele had talked about that before, where they were questioning him about the pants he was wearing on the job, and it seemed nobody else was being accosted about what pants they were wearing. I would just get standard so that I look nice, I'm presentable, I'm clean. I wear something that looks pretty similar, if not the exact same thing, meaning I have 4 or 5 different pants, same type of pants, same type of shirt, so that I even look pretty similar in terms of what I'm wearing every day. That doesn't stand out, and there's no cause for additional commentary and anything else about my attire. I think one of our callers down in Florida as well had said that one of the females was like, "Oh my, look at that shirt, you look so nice in that color," and that sort of thing. I would try and minimize that as much as I can as well. Do we have other folks who had commentary they wanted to get in on the wardrobe thing before we switch topics? Right on. Other folks Mr. Steele should be with us as well. Other folks who dialed in with the hand up, line should be open. Did we miss anybody? Other folks who dialed in with the hand up that we've not heard from? Assuming some folks might be spectating, because I do see additional hands, and it seems some of those folks haven't shared yet, or maybe they're in an area where they cannot speak as of yet. With the folks that are with us, if folks have a code, has anyone else worked out their code in terms of what they say? If you should be asked, I know the anthem thing was huge news this week. Folks have a code where this is what I say to make sure I don't have any issues with that.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I developed this a while back, without even really realizing it. It wasn't necessarily about the anthem, but it was, and I know I shared this story before, but a white woman, she had asked me, and it was a white woman who is anti-sexual. She had asked me about, it was right after the election of Donald Trump, and how terrible, quote unquote, it was supposed to have been. And I just immediately got in the question lane. She was like, and as soon as the questions began to get too, I don't know, just, she just stopped answering the questions because I did not want to make it about me. I wanted to, definitely hear her thoughts. Like the question was, basically, well, yeah, Donald Trump is bad, but then also like, what about Mike Pence? I heard that he really doesn't like gay people. And can you believe that? And, and I'm like, well, I don't, just basically just kind of make her talk more. And then she stopped right before she basically talked herself into a corner. So I'm like, okay, well, if he doesn't like gay people, then I wonder, how will he feel about, black people or I guess people of color? And at that point, she stopped talking, she turned around, and that conversation had ended. So I feel like even if you don't really know what to, even if you do want to say something, I would definitely recommend staying in the question lane. Thank you.
Always an advocate of asking questions. Either you don't have to say anything. I've said that also many times on the job. Sometimes you don't have to say a word. If you do, however, feel compelled to speak, questions, always a great way to proceed. And sometimes it works beautifully that way. You ask enough questions, you ask the right questions, conversation ends on its own. And we can all get back to work and we don't have to go through this little charade anymore about, as though we're as though we're having some sort of authentic dialogue. Just with the question, anybody else have their code worked out or have to deal with being questioned about what happened with the anthem to respond with that, particularly a white person asking that question? I presume folks did not have that issue this week. I again suspect if folks are not having any issue, and just my experience when I talk with people offline, I don't bring up workplace racism. People voluntarily bring up workplace racism when I speak with folks off the line. Every time. Only when we get to workplace racism on the broadcast do people at times hesitate and don't want to talk about it, and it takes more thinking and can be a much more difficult endeavor where people are honestly talking about things that are happening to us on a regular basis. But I do think it's important and folks should be making an effort to review some of the things that are happening. And if you've worked out some things that work well, we definitely need to hear that. Anybody that has figured out, hey, you can do this, and this will help you if you are in a situation where you're being falsely accused of something. If you figure out, we certainly need someone to be thinking about what to do when other white people are not doing their work on the job, and that is causing problems for you. Because we have heard tons of that, especially this year. People should be working on that as well. So not something you should be spectating for. I think Thursday night TV is about to come back on, so you'll have great alternatives. But this is not a program for spectating, listening. Folks should have active commentary to add for workplace racism. And or you can email if you're not in a position where you can dial in. Other folks, some of the folks that have a hand up that we've not heard from, did you actually have commentary, or do we still have folks that are just hanging in?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
That's just a question for the people on the line. How do you deal with racism on the job when it's a non-white person, like a manager that you're dealing with?
What are they doing, per se?
So, I guess in the situation, hiding information that is critical for the person that they're managing to be functional, fully functional on their job. Just something as simple as knowing their basic responsibilities, and going back to tell their manager that their subordinates are not doing their job.
Let me make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So if it's a non-white manager, they're not passing on constructive information, so you'll know the correct way of performing your duties. And then when that happens, the non-white manager goes back to tell his bosses, managers, whomever, that the employees are messing up. They're not doing their job right, leaving out that he's withholding information from them. Is that what's happening?
Correct.
Okay. One of the ways I reckon that could be handled, if we're missing information, you can stay in the question lane. Is there a problem with information? It seems that there was a problem with this particular job. If it was reported to someone else, I don't know how all of this is known, right? If he's going to report this to other people, are they getting in trouble or written up, or if, someone coming to let them know you messed up on such and such and such, and then you all are finding out that information was not passed on. I would just go with questions. It seems that the job that we did, we were reported or informed that we didn't do this correct or we didn't do this correct. And it turned out that there was additional information that was just not passed on. This is something we've talked about a lot as well in terms of non-white people not getting adequate training. If that's what it is, what can we do to make sure that we have all of the pertinent information and have it in a timely manner? Is this an email thing where if information is going to one person and it's not going to these other 10 people, can we also be included in the email? That way it's not dependent on this one person transferring the information. If it's not email, can we set up a time where everybody is present, where we can get a quick 5 minutes? This is the new updates or what have you that have come down for the past week or month or whatever it is. Do I need to ask? Do we need to start at the start of each week or at the start of each day? Do we need to inquire about updates? If that's what it is, I would find out where is the dam in the information transfer in terms of whatever knowledge is coming down that we're supposed to get. Where is it stopping where we're not getting the info? If it's stopping at this black person, I would be going to ask questions and to see what we can do to make sure that we get the information. And if it seems like he's not being as helpful, if you said he's going and reporting this to his managers or what have you, when they let you know that there's a problem, well then, hey, let's work on getting this solved, because it seems like this might be a communication breakdown. What can we do to improve communication to make sure everybody has the detail? And that way it's not even presenting it as this black person should be fired. We're not even going at it and saying he's messing up, he's not giving us the information. It just seems that we're not getting details we need to complete this job. That's one way I think that could be dealt with. And I think we've had this sort of issue before where the non-white people, like I said, are not getting trained or are somehow not getting info, and then they get blamed for it when it's, with constructive info being withheld. Do we have any other suggestions on how you would deal with this situation? Non-white manager withholding info from black workers and then they get blamed for it?
I just had one thing to say. I was wondering for the male caller, is there any way to get the information another way, like through your job's intranet or a portal, some other means like that? I know at some jobs, in the past that I've had, they would have large group email groups, to where it might not only go to your supervisor, but it would go to a whole area if it is something important to that particular production area. Maybe that could be worth inquiring about. If not, then I definitely agree with Gus, just, maybe asking, direct questions to, and still being courteous, but asking direct questions to the supervisor if you're comfortable with that, maybe not necessarily going over their head. And also, if you do have an HR department, maybe inquire with them, well, how would you go about, if you can do it anonymously, how would you go about addressing a issue with your supervisor when it comes to not receiving the information, because that could actually, if you're trying to make that job a career, that can actually mess up your future plans to either transfer or get promotions. Thank you, and I'll mute my line.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yes, there actually is not a portal where there's shared information. And we basically tend to get the information from other managers or others on the job. In addition to that, it would be something as if, sending an email trail, which is something that was attempted before. Send an email to and copy the manager and copy whoever else needs to be copied, but the manager will purposely not respond to the emails or act as if, it was something that went unread. And I think that's it. Okay, all right, that's it. Thank you.
I would ask that as well. If and that can work for you. I think we talked about that before, that being one of the benefits of doing emails and asking those type of questions, because then you have an electronic record of them withholding information. You're asking a pertinent job-related question, and they don't respond. If that's the case, then the next question would be, well, on such and such a date, and you can have the printouts there if you need them, on such and such a date, I emailed you, Ted, to get this pertinent information so that we could get this task finished, and I didn't get a response. And for some people, email is not their best method of communication. Do you have a recommendation on, what would be a better way to make sure that we get any pertinent information to get this done? Do we need to check in person at the beginning of the day? Some jobs, I know they have like boards that have information or updates for the day. You can even think of some things to suggest, or you can just go in and ask him. If email seems not to be the best way to make sure that we transfer all pertinent info, what would be the best way to resolve this, to make sure that there's no bottleneck in info, everybody has all the details when they need to know them to move forward with the job? And I would even bring that up as well. If this has been a pattern that you've noted where you email and ask for questions and then the person doesn't respond, I would bring that up if other people are coming in to accuse or blame the workers and say, hey, you all messed this up. You didn't do this, and then you found out that you didn't have the information. I would add that as well, that there seems to be some sort of breakdown in communication. We need to make some improvements there because emails are being sent to get details and there's no reply. I don't know, if something can be done about that, but that seems to be a problem as well. And again, you can have the emails right there, date, time. This is who I emailed, and I never got a response. Is that the company model that, we don't respond to emails? What can be done to improve this?
Thank you.
For sure. Other folks dialed in, or folks have suggestions on how to deal with that, the withholding information, or if you have your own situation you want to address, feel free. Mine should be open. Any of the other newer folks that dialed in with a hand up, did y'all have commentary? Just listening? I think Mr. Steele, one of our callers in Florida, y'all just listening?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir, Mr. Steele.
I wanted to report something very, very unique to me happened recently. I just want to say that I'm reporting from Chino Hills at the moment. And I just wanted to say something very strange happened to me on a job interview. I was meeting with this company, and the guy that was interviewing me, I'll say this. If there were ever a suspected white supremacist that appeared or that sounded exactly like the example white supremacist that Neely Fuller uses, his white supremacist voice, I guess, this would be a suspected white supremacist that fully embodied that statement. Just the scowl on his face when he, I guess, realized that I was a victim of racism. I couldn't. It was unavoidable, and his voice, it was eerily similar. At one point, he asked me if I had any questions, and then I asked him, what is the dress code for this office? And he looked me dead in my eye, and he replied, what I'm wearing right now, this is the dress code. And at that moment, I was pretty sure, I would not be working in this environment. He did not defer to any sort of code or any sort of guideline or any sort of conventional style guide or anything like that. No, he just said, "I am the dress code." So I definitely do not want to work in an environment where the suspected racists are so open with their conduct that they declare themselves to be the law within the confines of the workplace. So that was just something that came up, and that was related to the previous conversation about dress code. I think all the previous comments that were made on the topic, they were great. There was a victim that was having, what was one of the questions that came up earlier? It wasn't related to the dress code, but if you could jog my memory real quick.
Excuse me. One of the questions was, what keeps us from practicing counter-racism in the workplace, applying our code in the workplace? Let's see, what other questions do we have? About,
and then there's another...
About being disingenuous in the workplace.
Oh, yes. Okay. That was definitely something I wanted to touch on. If you listen to some of the logic that's put forth by Neely Fuller, I think part of the code he identifies is that we should aim to be more courteous than anybody that we deal with. Our level of courtesy should we should aim to be, as courteous as possible with all of the people that we interact with, even the suspected racists. That isn't to say that, we should help them, practice racism, white supremacy. Quite the contrary. When you are courteous towards them, that oftentimes, in my experience, serves to disarm some of the tools that they use to rile us up and to get us off of our ability to control our emotions. And I think just remaining courteous, saying please, thank you, talking when spoken to, just a friendly hello, good morning, just to ingratiate ourselves while we are on their plantations. I think that can go a long way in just helping you to reduce and minimize conflict or unnecessary attention when you are on the job. And also, I just want to remind previous callers, there is the concept of, showing face to some of these events so that you don't, get any sort of unwanted attention from not attending. Just have a code, stick to 45 minutes to an hour that you are there and present. Keep it to the beginning part when people are not so inebriated, and then, politely make your exit. You can be on your phone even, or you can just make the rounds and do your niceties and say hello, 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 just to make sure that everybody has seen you and, you're seen as a team player. And then you can even see that as part of your job, even though that's not written down. That's just something that you could be expected to do depending on the culture of your workplace. So those were just some comments that I wanted to make, and I'll go ahead and mute my line at this time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that, Mr. Steele. I forgot what time of year it is. I told you we had record heat in Seattle today, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 29 just when we went live, 29 degrees Celsius at the time the broadcast began. But it is autumn. It is almost October. Dr. Kamal Kamban, he says this is the horror season. All of those holidays are about to begin. Certainly need to have a code about all of that. I don't know if you're in one of those office situations where they're going to do Halloween, where they're dressing up and all that stuff in a few weeks, and then the big ones with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the nonsense as we get down to the end of the year. But definitely want to have a code in place because the invitations are going to begin soon, and candy on the desk and all of that. Just have your code together. Again, you don't have to be aloof. You don't have to be nasty. You can even have your code be thinking of it. If they want to ask, what are you going to be doing for the holidays? Are you going to dress up? And all of that, you can already be thinking of how you're going to respond, minimize problems, not creating any new problems. Other folks, did we miss anybody? Any folks have hands up that we've not heard from?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I was thinking about, I think there was a question earlier about like when I think you're either, I guess, prompted to talk about the topic of race or racism, and I guess someone goes to, I guess, relate a message to a powerful white person or just a white person. The 6 years I've been on the job, it does seem like every time that comes up, it's almost was completely every time they are the ones who will try to bring it up to me. Like I've never really been in a situation where, you know, they'll try to, I guess, you know, try and do things to me or whatever. But the way that, or I guess the form of codification that I would do or use is, I guess I was speaking abstractions, or I'll try and say something real concise that'll, I guess, be factual. You know, I'll just say, well, hey, you know, we need to have a conversation or something like that. You know what I mean? That's something that genuinely needs to take place when you have a problem. You know, like, is there a problem? And people, like, their responses will be, yeah, you know, there is a problem. And they'll agree with me and they say, yeah, you know, we should be able to discuss these things. And then someone will say, well, you know, people are just too scared. And, you know, see, like the other day, right, speaking about these, I guess, like these protests, the kneeling down and stuff, like it just seemed like well, mainly these are white women. They'll just, you know, try and start a conversation on that. And then they'll get into talking about themselves. Like this is the experience that I've had, or that I've had. I don't know if anyone else has had this. Like they'll get into talking about what they think, you know. And, you know, like every once in a while, let's say, oh, well, you know, like you got these churches with white people in it and churches, you know, black churches. And they say, I know you noticed it, didn't you? And I say, yeah, you know, I have noticed that. And like, you know, they'll just go on and like basically give their own views, you know, like, well, you know, I don't know, you know, what your experiences are, you know, I'm different, and, you know, you have your own opinion or whatever. And I'll just, you know, nod. And I say, yeah, I understand. And I say, you know, like what I've heard said on here, like, and stuff like that. And this lady, she was just, I guess she like almost 60 years old or whatever. And she would just, I guess, going to talk about like how she'll have conversations, I guess, with one other black person. And, you know, it just seems like a lot of the conversations, they've come to me wanting to talk about this. And I've usually ended up not really voicing like the way that I truly, I guess, or completely feel about it. I'll just say something that's more like surface. And, you know, they end up saying all type of stuff like, yeah, like you got all these schools who have students going into their own groups and stuff like that. And then, you know, one guy, he say, well, you know what, what's wrong with that? Like, it reminded me of, I think it was one of those old audios people have heard, I guess, with Mr. Fuller and Dr. Wilson. I guess they had at maybe it was like the Wilson Institute or something. And, they was talking about, I guess, like how, they don't want, white people don't want their grandchildren to be black or something like that. And they don't want no sex action going on. So they want to stay in their own areas and stuff. Like, that's why I think this old guy, he was going at stuff like that, so they'll tend to get into speaking about things like that, at least in my experience. And so I would recommend just, I guess, asking questions. And that's what worked for me. Like, and I pretty much have, I guess you can say, constructive encounters with the white people at my job. So, but other than that, I would just talk about work-related things. But, like times like when I'm on lunch break or something, they would mention things like this. And I wanted to also mention one other thing. Like I'm like one of the only few, I guess, males on the job. And like I've noticed something. Like I don't know if it's been discussed. Is there like a difference between like when a male is mistreated by a female, then the opposite, if a male mistreats a female, like the reaction to it? Like I guess you can say, like me as a black male, like if I'm mistreated by just a female, period, whether she is white or non-white, it seems like the people there, I guess it's because it's female dominated. They don't seem like they're that concerned. Like they might think like, he's just supposed to just quote unquote brush it off, or be able to endure, to use a more direct word, to endure the mistreatment, or it'll be disguised as jokes or things like that. Has that ever been discussed on the program, guys?
I'm thinking. I cannot think of anything. I cannot think of any point where we had a dialogue about that. I don't. In terms of if the mistreatment is coming from a non-white female, I can't speak to that. I do know when I personally was mistreated by white women on the job, and then seeing when any male was accused of mistreating a white woman in particular, it was very different. In the other situations that I can think of where it was a female on a job who was accused of mistreating another employee, white women, it was quite different in terms of overall, just if it's a female, white or non-white, and she's mistreating a male person, is that treated differently than a male mistreating a female, white or non-white? I don't know if it's an overall difference or what other people's experience on that is, but I certainly know if it's a white woman in the equation, absolutely massive difference. Other folks have, I guess, to have an observation or thoughts on that. Is there a difference in how the person is treated?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I did actually want to say that I do see a difference, but the difference that I've seen was more along the lines of if a female is like flirting with a male, the male should be flattered, rather than if it's a male kind of flirting with a female, and if it's I guess like or more like on more than one occasion, then it can kind of be viewed as like harassment. So I definitely see that, and I kind of feel like it seems like that's going against the whole equal rights type of thing that white women like to speak about. If a woman or a female should not be able to harass a man, just how a man should not be able to harass a woman. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I've seen that as well. The harassment where white women in particular, where they can go out and harass males, even white males, where they can do that and it is not taken as a serious issue. We don't need to have any refreshers on our sexual harassment policy. Like, this is all just giggles. Whereas if it's the other way around, totally different situation, especially if it's a black male accused of mistreating sexually a white woman. Did other folks have observations on this? Is there a difference in the workplace and in how these allegations or allegations of mistreatment are handled? Folks are still spectating, I see. The caller in Florida,
Gus,
oh, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, that made me think about something. There was a few workplace races. I think it was probably like a couple of weeks ago when a male, I think it was a black male, he worked in a shoe store and he was kind of getting harassed by a white woman. Right. And he was asking for tips. And I know one of the tips that he didn't get, because it just by this question, it made me think of it. I think that maybe in this situation, because it kind of seems like he would be dealing with something like this, to if he has to encounter that white woman again who was saying the whole 69 comments and, you know, kind of trying to show off herself as she was quote unquote trying on shoes. I would just suggest to either take someone else, try to see if someone else could be there with him, or actually, you know, just pass that, you know, I guess sale, if he does make commission or whatever, pass that off, try to pass it off to someone else. So that way, you know, because it seems like it might, like if he were to, you know, bring it up to a higher up, this might be the same instance where, okay, well, you should be flattered that this woman is trying to sexually sewer you or whatever. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good suggestion. Hope you heard that. I do remember that caller who was talking about that sexual terrorist from some patron at the store or retailer where he works at. Any other, or I guess I did not hear any other observations about if there's a difference in treatment in the workplace. The caller in Florida, did you notice something that sparked your query about that? If we talked about that before, have you made any observations in your workplace?
Well, I think like I started to notice it, like with the type of job that I do, like I'm pretty much moving around the building and I go like pretty much on all of the different floors. So I'm in contact with just about everyone, and it is definitely overwhelmingly female, I would say, like maybe 95% female. And like the things that I know that they'll say, like toward me, I guess, you know, somebody might say it's like complimentary, but I know like I cannot say it in reverse, like, or toward them. Like I guess, you know, like how I shared before, the lady saying that, you know, you look good in this color blue or whatever. And, you know, there have been females, you know, ladies that agreed with me and say, yeah, you wouldn't have been able to say that same thing, you know, and, you know, they'll agree with me. Or if it's something like there was a non-white female that, I guess you can say it was like a sexual type of insult. This was a little while ago. She said that, somebody's birthday was on Monday and she asked me, was I going to wear a dress or something like that? And this was a non-white person. So I just simply said no. And, you know, I had proceeded to walk out the door, you know. So, you know, of course, this is a victim of racism. But like I said before, like if I were to have said that to her or something like that, it's like as the word sexual harassment was used, I think she could easily say that's toward me. Or if no one has seen me do anything, you know, I have dark skin and I'm tall, and people, hey, immediately go to that. And I work in a courthouse, so that's automatically, hey, you know, this is a person who's trying to do harm to this female. And I agree that it's definitely the white woman who has that power the most. You they'll say, like I said before, like, hey, hey, good looking or something like that. And it just does seem to have a different play out or dynamic that's there. But for the most part, the people are, I guess, constructively receptive to me and like, my character, things like that. But, I feel as though some feel like, I guess, like they just deserve my attention. And if I just keep it just on a professional morning or something like that, and if it doesn't exceed beyond that, I guess they may not, say nothing to me or try to do things around me to get me to speak to them, stuff like that. Like it seems like it'll go into all of those different type of behaviors. So that's some of the things that I've noticed.
Interesting. Yeah, I would tend to that very much seems in line with my workplace history and observations. I think we've done whole programs about the leniency that white women have in the workplace, although I don't remember if that went to punishment per se, or not punishment necessarily, but just in terms of how people are perceived when there is potential mistreatment happening in the workplace, if that mistreatment is coming from a female as opposed to a male against a male as opposed to a female. But yeah, that is very much in line with what I've seen in terms of white women as perpetrators. They can get away with pretty much anything in the workplace, and it's just all giggles and, oh, isn't that funny? And then the other way around, you could not, half of the things that they're able to say and or do, you could not possibly get away with that with a white woman. The comments, that were made to you, and it's a litany of things, just reflecting back on my workplace experience, where it's no way. The things that I saw white women doing, sometimes things that were even done under the guise of a joke, that they were being funny, and oh man, like smacking people on the bottom, and oh man, just all kinds of things that I've seen where it would have been a lawsuit, police might have been called, all kinds of things, whereas they did it and it was all giggles. In my experience, it does not, the way that white women function on the job, black females are not able to function that way. Non-white females aren't afforded those same type of, authority, power, impunity from punishment or what have you. I have not seen that, but with white women, oh man, it is extraordinary and dangerous. Extraordinary and dangerous, the way that they're able to function in the workplace. And it can be both at the same time, where they're the perpetrator, because I think I've seen that as well, where they're the perpetrator. Then when something gets raised about that, they become the victim as well. That, oh man, I've been maligned, and that extremely dangerous. I can just leave it there. If other folks have observations, that's fine as well. Anybody else comment or observation on this subject? One folks can think on for the next week if they've seen any sorts of differences along those lines. Any other comments folks wanted to make sure they got in? We would do our 3 hours, but folks are, I'm not sure if they have other plans, if it was super warm in other places where people were so stunned with the beautiful weather, they wanted to be doing other things and not talking about workplace racism. But did folks have other commentary they wanted to make sure they get in?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Diane. I had two things that came to mind. The female caller from New York, observation that I've had is that there are two particular white people who I work with who are extremely overweight, but not just that, they have a really offensive odors. And I've just observed how none of the white people in the group seem to be aware of it. I mean, they have to smell it because it's really strong, to the point like when they walk past, like I literally hold my breath because it's that much of an offense to me. We're supposed to be moving soon to different departments, and I'm hoping to be, not located near these two. But I guess I'm just curious as to, should I even, I guess if it gets too bad, I would definitely feel the need to say something about it. But just the fact that they are continually allowed to come to work with this offensive odor, and nothing is said, and, everybody just goes about as if they can't smell it. And I don't see how that's possible, because it's very, very strong. And one more observation, this came to mind. I actually overheard a white man, an older white man, who had been involved with a business for years. I just happened to overhear this conversation. He was kind of concerned about his position with the changes that were happening. And I can tell he's insecure about it, and he's just trying to fill it out and see what is it going to be for him, because he's not sure. But you can tell that he's very comfortable in the position that he's had. He's kind of, he's senior white, which is, even better. He has a lot of perks because of that. He even made a comment one time saying that, just talking in a dialogue, that he was special. It just came out, and he's so entrenched with that, it just kind of oozes out of him. But he mentioned, and I know this was more of a concern for him, that he has worked for companies that when they want to get rid of somebody without firing, if there's some kind of, they have to be careful not to fire people for a certain reason, because maybe they know that the people will have some kind of justification in retaliating against that. He said that he specifically said that he knows that there are executed strategies where they will do everything in their power. Like, they literally plot this, they strategize it, they execute, they talk about, they've discussed it. They will do everything in their power to make that person uncomfortable and basically get that person to quit. And it's not just a oops, or I really don't like this person, so I'm going to exude this energy. They literally talked about it and planned it and strategized it and executed it to get somebody to quit. And, it just came back to mind listening to that conversation, that he was just so emboldened and so comfortable that he actually just said that. But I don't think he was aware of what he was revealing. And with that, I mute my line.
With your situation, if I'm not sure if this is something that's like an immediate, let's get this addressed tomorrow or Monday, or if this is, you're trying to wait and see, since you all are going to move, and if this will just all be a moot point eventually, because you might be in a different part of the building, the new building, than these two offensive coworkers that you're with, white coworkers that you're with. I would bring it up if it's something that you want to address before the move, to see if you can maybe get remedied whatever remaining time you have left at the current spot. I would just bring it up because this is one that doesn't have anything to do with racism that can be brought up. This should be substantially easier to handle, in my view, where you should be able to just go to your manager or even human resources, and you could just ask them, like, what's our procedure? How do we deal with some worker, an employee who has a hygiene problem that is, bothering other people who work here? I think most workplaces, they have something about that, in their policy and procedure. Or you can even check the policy and procedure yourself and see if they have something about hygiene in the manual, and then you can just bring it up there, and it same thing. And this, again, in my view, makes it easier. It doesn't have to be brought up as, I want these winches fired today. It could just be brought up that, this is offensive. It's impacting the workplace, and just what can be done to get this remedied. Some people, whatever, they can handle that. That's a conversation you shouldn't even have to participate. That's something they can dole off on the HR people or the supervisor. They can call a little private meeting and get that remedied. I do also think that this goes back to our earlier point about wardrobe, where black people, again, I cannot imagine black people being allowed to be on a job and have poor hygiene or wear the same clothes or whatever it is, and white people just have nothing to say about that and no big deal. That is another way racism, white supremacy is manifested in workplace situations. But that's what I would do. And I guess to the last point that you brought up in terms of maybe you can think about that if you all move to the new spot and they locate these two stinky white chicks next to you. Maybe this is being done purposely to mess with you or to make you uncomfortable as relates to the strategy that you overheard. But yeah, I would just bring it up with human resources or whatever that it's a problem. I would check the manual because you might be able to use their exact terminology about this and let them handle it. Any other comments? Folks wanted to make sure they get in. Anything else? Folks satisfied? Nothing else they wanted to make sure they got in? I will hope.
Can I do it?
Oh, yes, sir.
Just really quick. There was a customer that came in, and I guess he would be like non-black or non-white, or what they call Indian. Like the white female, she was talking to another white female about, I guess, the customer. He was asking a bunch of, I guess, legal type questions, and the policy states that we aren't supposed to disclose any legal advice because that could come back to us in some type of way. And the person was trying to look up liens or debts in his name on his property. And so, they were talking about it. So she asked, was his last name Patel? Because that's like, I guess, a common name, last name for Indian people or whatever, non-white people. So the other lady says, oh no, it's something else. So this white person, she says, oh well, he looked like he could have been a Patel, like Patel. So whatever that meant. So like just stuff like that. Like I try to make sure, like I write that stuff down, whenever they say it. And when they say it, I make sure that I don't respond. I want to look at what theirs is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to know what their response is going to be. And most of the time, it's, they'll usually just be quiet like they ain't said it. So it's like they try and look my way to see if I'm going to react first. Just like that one that I shared before about, like, the lady came out of the office and we were by the time clock. So she said, man, like these foreigners, that's the term she used. These foreigners, like they was really just getting on my nerves. So like, it's like they just, once again, they looked at to see what my response was going to be. Then when it was an empty response, they couldn't read me. The two white people started trying to see if they can just move away from what was just said, and try and backtrack and, to move along or whatever. So, she became unrefined for a little bit. And that's what I wanted to share. And like one last thing about that last comment about when she was talking about my shirt, like you can tell that she knew that she has a lot of power. Like she looks over to the black female and another white female, and then she said it again, like, doesn't blank look good in that shirt? And it's like, the response they gave, it was real forced. Like, oh yeah, like, I guess you can say, justifiable just fear, in some kind of way. Yeah, she knew what she was doing with that comment. And this is clothing related because she was talking about that experiment. And on that letter, when I read it, it did say, feel free to come and ask. It had that in parentheses. It says, like, given that I did this social experiment, and then it says, feel free to come ask if you like. So if she broadcasted that in the newsletter, she's inviting anyone in the workplace to come ask her questions about it. like I feel as though maybe that could be a potential setup for somebody to see if she could do it that way, to see if someone wasn't doing any gossip, maybe she can get someone using that method. Like, do you get why I'm getting at with that one?
Listen, you said, I know with the experiment, it seemed like there was maybe some means to get people gossiping about her, to maybe get them in trouble while she was doing the experiment. You think also with the debrief that might be a means to get people to come and ask questions about it to catch them some way?
Yes, sir. That's like I was thinking about that the past couple of days, because it still seemed like she was trying to scheme with it, like trying to be very conniving with it again. Like she's saying that it ended, but it could be some form of double speak to say that, it's still going on. You can come ask me about it. And she want to try and go another way with it by mentioning either my attire or someone else's, because I don't see her complimenting anybody else, at least not in my presence. So she, said that toward me, and I hadn't really spoken to her very much this week, but she pretty much over the whole area on the other side of the building. So she definitely like throwing her power around. So that's why I had used that metaphor, the warden. So there was a black female. She said, "Hey, you be careful with that one," And I said, "I agree."
Wow. I would be just the fact alone that she's conducting experiments in the workplace is more than enough reason to be extremely cautious with any project that she's going to be involved in. If it's still going on or whatever it is, any suspicion is warranted and logical with this situation, because that's just. For all the talks that we've had about workplace racism, I certainly cannot think of anything even closely resembling that, where someone is carrying out an experiment in the workplace on other employees and might even be looking to, as a part of the experiment, to get them to gossip so that they can get in trouble with this experiment. That's just wow. The manipulation of white women. I would continue to be cautious in dealing with that one in any way, shape, form. And certainly, she also is not ignorant about her power as a race soldier, white woman, just like the white chick that came out and made the comment about your shirt and then said it again publicly and made everybody else co-sign on her comment. White people are not ignorant about racism. You cannot be. Any other comments folks want to make sure they get in? Anything else? I would assume folks are satisfied. Again, if you are doing well, you're not having any of these issues, the white people on your job are not conducting experiments on you, you're not being harassed, white women are not subjecting you to unwanted touching, white men are not subjecting you to unwanted touching and questions about your political leanings, great. I hope it continues. Take notes so that you can share and let us know how you got in that position. If you are having difficulties, feel free to drop us an email and we can share your comments. Next week, this is every Thursday, Workplace Racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Much obliged to all the folks who participated. I hope it was a constructive investment of your Thursday evening. I guess for Stacy, your Friday morning. We'll be back tomorrow. France Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, second to last study session. Almost done. Get to move on to a new book. Thank goodness. We'll be here on Saturday for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. With that, I will again encourage sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We already have enough problems. Race soldiers, they really take advantage and exploit us when we are not able to think in a coherent manner because we are intoxicated. And there's a lot of evidence that that has been true for years, centuries even. I think Dr. Welsing and many of the other folks that we laud, black people, I think many of them would strongly recommend, yes, let's do all that we can to preserve our brain functioning, our brain computer, so that we can think and crank out solutions to deal with the problems facing black people. And I think it would put us in a much better position in taking away one of the weapons that whites have shown themselves to be able to use in a superb and devastating manner against black people, all of their toxins and poisons. People talking about what's going on down in Houston right now with Hurricane Harvey and all the chemicals and pollutants that the residents are having to endure, which is true, but we should have the same thought process about alcohol, tobacco, cigarettes, all the other toxins that they dump on us. We should have the same mentality. That is poison too, and we don't need that either. And if you're going to be in a vehicle, you certainly want to be sober and you want to buckle up, driver or pedestrian. Do everything we can to minimize contact with race soldiers. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.